thing to do is to imagine that this is a big lake, because as you notice, it is a depression in the ground, and once we get some heavy rains, or assuming we will get some heavy rains, this will become a lake. And in the winter months, it's all covered with water. And then once we get to springtime, that water slowly drains, and this whole area is slightly graded downhill in this direction. And so the farms up at the top end of this depression will dry out first. By April, the farmers will be farming again up in this area. May, June, July, and finally by July, there are farms that are in production actually right now, because it's still so dry. There are going to be farms way down here that are the last to produce, and they'll get a crop in, and then they're done. And so that's how this region of the valley actually does its farming, and it sort of coexists with wetland, with a wetland, which is what it is. So this is interesting to me, because when I look at it, it looks so permanently like farmland, but it's all going to disappear in a month or so. So, and all of this, infrastructure will come out. So the water agency thought, this is such a natural place to store water. Why don't we just store more water here? And all we would have to do is just leave the water in a little bit longer, and so that by the time June and July came, there'd still be water here that could then be pumped to farmers. And this would be a little reservoir in the middle of this valley. So it's, again, as Eli said, a partial solution to the overall valley groundwater problem. So why, and so to me that's plausible. It sounds like it would work. But there are farmers down here who own the land, and they have been farming here for almost a century. And so they have their groundwater systems, they have their rights to farm. They formed an association of their own to handle their own water issues. And the farmers who farm down at this end of this little valley within a valley have said, no, we're not going to give up farming. And so what happens here is, I briefly described to you the hydrogeology and a little bit of the engineering that would enable this to become just a temporary reservoir. Basically, instead of this being dried out by May, it wouldn't dry, they would keep it filled till like July. So like an extra couple months, and then use that water instead of pumping groundwater. So that's all we're asking for, is a couple extra months of surface water in this valley. So we have the hydrogeology, we have the technology, but now, just like with our class, if you remember how we set up our class, we now turn to the economics, the regulation, the property rights, and the public acceptance and public perception. And that's where this plan gets tripped up, because the water agency itself is supposed to be helping the farmers. And these farmers are saying, you're not going to kill us to help farmers, we're farmers. And the agencies say, well, you have a good point there. We don't want to kill you. But nevertheless, technologically and ecologically, this makes sense. But this water agency, and really no water agency, wants to have a heavy hand and force people to do anything. And there are civil rights, and there are property rights laws and things that protect them. So we're not going to have that kind of a, there could be a vote, there could be a tough negotiation, there could be all these things where people stomp out of the meeting. But force is really not something that will settle this.